transition and calling certain elements of human conduct forbidden to your growth almost create a stronger invitation to do those things because of the subconscious forbidden nature. Now, to us, that is the way humans are. Even that response to forbidden things. You shouldn't be responding to forbidden things. You shouldn't see them as forbidden things, mysterious forbidden things. You should have enough next level mind in as just simply to see them as primitive things, characteristics of vehicles that are awry in these areas, and that you're not going to, or your job is to work hard to work against those things and to be above them and learn to control them, even when they seem to be almost at times out of control. Now, there's a lot of difference between, believe it or not, between someone losing a match on rare occasions and someone losing match with relative frequency. There is a lot of difference. The same kind of difference I feel like for you all to have to fight off sleepiness. T and I would be the most understanding about sleepiness that any people could be if we've all just driven to Cheyenne and back. And we've said, now we didn't stop to sleep all the way to Cheyenne, we didn't stop to sleep all the way back, but we've got to have a meeting right now before you have a chance to rest. We would understand sleepiness. But sleepiness to us translates, even the mildest form of sleepiness is to us no different than when you were in school and you went to a lecture at college or someplace and your mind started saying, the vehicle's mind started saying, sure would rather be in the snack bar than listen to this boring professor. Now, a parallel to that is for your vehicle to say, oh, I'm sure I'm getting sleepy. It's kind of warm in here, and I'm having to sit still so long. And if it isn't even saying it, but it's feeling it. Because some of you still don't even know when your eyes start to get at half-mast, and we say, wake up. You look insulted that we're saying, wake up, which means you're insensitive to the con game, which is very, very tardy for you to be insensitive to the con games of your vehicle. Very, very tardy in this area. Now, don't say that, oh my, I'm so tardy that, well, if you want to say that, that's your business. If you want to say, I must be so tardy that I don't know how I can catch up, that's your business. But we hope you have better sense than that. Because to us, when we come to sit with you, we want this task done. We want to do a good job, but we want it done at the minimum time that a good job can be done. Whatever the gestation period is for your vehicles, whatever the time period is that we've been given to leave work, we want the minimum time done, and to us, that's with all our might. We want the minimum time done. And if you don't, if you like this game so much, the difficulty of this task so much, which I can't believe you do, but in a sense, it's like adjusting to it. You know, I'm kind of adjusting to it. I've been sitting here for years listening to those two up there. You know, that's the way the vehicle is responding. It's a slap in the face, not as much to T and Do, but to the task for that to happen. Now, say again, for you to weaken in certain areas of weakness of the vehicle on rare occasions, because of whatever the circumstances are, that you might have lost control in this little area, but for you to lose control in certain areas almost with an added frequency instead of a less frequency in some of those areas of control. It means you're simply have not learned the technique of employing effort. And I'm sorry, we're not going to take the blame. We've taught you the technique of effort. And I feel like even right this moment, there's some who haven't forced their vehicle right now to sit there with a vitality. That if I look at them, I'll get discouraged because of the downness that I see. So T and I, we try to make a habit to avoid looking at the vehicles that have a con game with you, because it's a distraction to us. And now, I know that I sound like I'm coming on pretty hard, but do you want us to tolerate this kind of garbage? Do you want to let it increase? Do you want your development to slow down or to pick up? And I hate to sound that harsh, but as we go further, if we don't close in on these things that are dragging behind and help force you to force control in action, then what good are we to you? If we pat you on the back and say, "Oh, good luck, Sonny, I hope you really get control of that," then you won't. You simply won't. If it were that easy, we wouldn't have to come and help you through it. You could do it, and we could visit you, every 6 months or so.
I wish we could do it for you.
I wish we could too.
Because if we could,
I know we
would do it.
We would do it.
And we would be out of here by now.
And we would do it.
But we can't. Now, the thing of it is, getting back to the sleepiness, the reason this came up was because of the Help Wanted meeting that you all had. I don't know what the date was, but it was given to us at the last meeting, and we read it, and I was surprised. Now, there were a couple of answers that were next level answers. Like one said, I listened so intensely with because Joe was so vibrant and alive that I was more interested in what he had to say. Now, that is the next level thought. In other words, you're more interested in what's coming out than your vehicles. Now, once you start allowing your vehicles to start exposing their sleepiness, then you no longer listen to what is coming out of your teacher's mouth. Now, when we leave here, every night we have a meeting, when we leave here, our vehicles are exhausted. But we cannot go to sleep. We may stay up for hours after we get back to our craft because of the frequency that has come through our vehicles. Even though our vehicles are crying, they're tired and all that, we don't listen to it. Now that sounds like conflict, but it is the truth. It's like a wired up feeling. Now, if it happens to us, why doesn't it happen to you if you are receiving this in the right way? Some of you, I believe it does. Now, we're not talking to all of you as a group. I mean, we're not saying all of you are guilty of doing this. But the ones of you who are listening to the vehicle and fighting off sleepiness and all like that, you're behind in a way, and you should exert effort to not listen to that vehicle.
It's far more serious than the element of sleepiness.
Right.
Do you know why it's more serious than the element of sleepiness? Because in other words, it's far more serious than just an element of sleepiness. Because sleepiness has some side issues with it that are more important than the sleepiness itself. Those side issues are, while I'm sleepy, if I can permit my vehicle to be sleepy during a meeting, I am going to miss half of what is coming my way.
I bet you that you don't even think of going to sleep when a TV program is on.
Or when you're at your out of craft task doing some.
When you're going to a movie, I bet you don't think about sleep.
And are you bathing your vehicle so much that if it sits still, if it's sitting still,
well, they're sitting
listening,
still watching television. They're sitting still watching a movie.
Yes, but we're not busting up cars and throwing things.
I know, but the knowledge that is coming through and the frequency is a lot more important than that movie. The difference is that it's a change for you, which is it's backward. In other words, some of you are eager to hear when we come for a meeting, and you're radiated, and we feel it. But some of you think you want it, but you're not quite. You can listen for a little bit, and then your eyelids start drooping, and you start getting a little bored, and you start listening, thinking of other things, and just forgetting that what is happening for you alone.
I'll tell you something else that happens. If we're fighting for words, if T and I are fighting for words, and it's hard to get a thought out because the words don't come easily to describe what it is we're trying to talk about, and we may have to spin our wheels for a little while trying to trying to express the thought we're trying to express. What do you think is going to help us express that? For you to relax a minute and think, well, here's a gap while they're spinning their wheels. Or for you to listen even more intently at that moment as if you were helping us find the word. Do you see what we're saying? Because a lot of times I can feel when it's hard for us to describe something. Or we may have described it once, and now we're trying to say it another way. And the words may not come as quickly into our brain to try to find another way to describe it. And then the third time we try to describe it, the words may come even slower. Now, humans would, at the second time, listen a little less carefully, and the third time, a little less carefully. Members of the next level do just the opposite. Just the opposite. The second time, they're going to listen more intently to that second description because it wouldn't have been necessary for us to say it a second time a different way if the first time had been adequate. So they're wondering, well, if they feel it's important to say it, to hunt for another way to say it, then I must need to understand it in more depth than the way it was expressed the first time. Now, I feel like, personally, I have to many times try to use colors on my canvas that are iridescent chartreuses, cherises, and oranges in order to get your full attention. And in a sense, that's a put-down. Do you know what we're saying? That's a put-down. Because that we shouldn't have to express ourselves in such showmanship in order to try to get your full attention. We should be able to sit with you as T and I would sit with each other, talking about something that is significant to us, and the excitement is in the subject matter. And the delivery is in the way. Can you follow that? But here the delivery has to be kept very vibrant for you in order to keep the wires alive. And even then it doesn't succeed many times with some of your vehicles. Now, we're hitting pretty hard on this subject because we hope you're tired of this subject. And the funny thing was, some of you whose vehicles have trouble in this area didn't even mention this area on your notes. Some of you who have trouble with the slowness laziness or just controlling your vehicle and its motions and its movement and being alive in that way, those things were left out. But only the very blatant things were on those lists, almost as if those other things were human elements and didn't need to be mentioned. Well, they are human elements, and that's why they need to be mentioned, because they are still in your way of the best speed you can get out of your vehicle in its learning capacity. Everybody?
On the list, thank you. I think I listed one of mine as being too detailed. Too much word. Yeah. And just kind of struggled over that note to strip it down.
Trying to be less wordy, right?
Right. And I remembered what I thought you had said about how maybe most of the things should be whittled down to maybe 5 major things, and that was my goal. I feel now that maybe I was going in the wrong direction and wonder if I should.
Well, I don't remember. Did we give? Well, that's a misapplication.
That's what
Yeah,
I
we
was
talked
thinking.
about
That's a misapplication when we said probably most of you could put your things in 5.
Category.
Yeah. Well, that's a misapplication because some of you need to get 15 on there to find the 5. Because the 5 you list aren't the 5. Maybe 2 of those 5 you listed were among the 5 that were the root system of your particular 5. Do you see what we're saying? But to cut yourself down to 5 just didn't work for some of you. It took a lot more than that to find the 5 that were really the roots of the others.
We know what the other ones are, but we want to know if you know what they are. That's the important thing. In other words, we know what you all have to deal with. Each individually, we can sit down and write each one of you, write it down what each one of you has to do. But we want you to realize that's what your matches are. And therefore, it doesn't help us to, we don't understand if you don't write down what we know that you need, even though they could be placed in certain categories.
Let me add something to that because like a lot of times we have told you what some major areas are that you have to work on, and you would, if you have not, if it has not come into your realization that these areas are in fact your areas, then when we're telling you about it, first of all, a sense of defensiveness comes in, and a sense of, well, I'm not sure I see that, but if you tell me, then I'll hunt for it. I'll be glad to accept you that you're. Now, don't look, because all of you do this. All of you respond this way, because this is a normal process to respond this way. But the great thing happens when you say in return, boy, I can see that thing that you used to mention that I was slow to even know what you were talking about. And I was sure it didn't really apply to me, and at times I could even wonder how you could think I had that characteristic to deal with. And when you have finally come circle and said, boy, can I see that characteristic in vivid labels on my own vehicle, that's when you can really start making progress. But prior to that time, we're kind of easing in, hoping that you will take the thought that we give to you and start finding it, focusing in and finding it yourself and recognizing it as what you have to deal with. And believe it or not, there are still some major areas that some of you still, when we mention them to you, you accept them as a dutiful student, but you have not yet really recognized them yourself as something you see clearly as in opposition to your next level mind, and something you are going to devote your energies in getting control of. You want to take the question?
Sure, Miller.
Yes, you did. I feel like I did somewhat like the rodeo. I was trying not to give you too terrible much to read because I had recently written a very long one. But I know that I'm like, maybe I should offer to do it again, but I am more interested in knowing what you would write on it that I've left out. And really, I would like to see that. I'd like to know what it is I might be totally missing. And so I'd be hesitant to say, well, I'll write it over because I want to know what you might
Well,
put on.
see, but some that you missed out on, I've taken just Melody as an example because she's no different than most of you in this respect. Some of that you have missed out, believe it or not, we have very clearly expressed to you more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times. And yet, but we feel like you're coming around to beginning to bring them into focus, where you can see what we were saying when we said them. But now, at this point, if we say them again, what we're hoping for is that you can say them because you see them, not you're saying them because you're a parent or because you think Lynx has found these characteristics in me. Can you all see the difference in that? But what we want to hear from you is that you that you can use those words and they mean to you what they once meant to us. And when they meant that to us, they weren't clearly understandable or acceptable, or you had to dilute them by going here and there and say, well, do you mean this, and do you mean that, and do you mean this? Because when you get to where you're seeing it, it won't take any more words than we took when we expressed it to you. And you will be able to say, boy, can I see what this vehicle was blinding me to in this area, and it was so-and-so. And usually in a matter of a sentence or two, or sentence, you can describe those characteristics. Now, when you need a lot of description, then the focus is fuzzy. When you need, do you all understand that? When you need a lot of description on particular areas, the focus is fuzzy. Now, the funny thing is, though, when you get to the point where you can describe that area in a few words, the danger then is those few words, when they're coming from us to you, if you have not come full circle to see them, those few words don't mean to you what, in other words, you would have to say those few words in 1,000 words to try to get to the point of saying, oh, is that what you mean? Is that what you mean? But when you know that's what, not what we meant, but that's what you are dealing with, when you have recognized that, then all that it'll take is a sentence. And at that moment, we'll say, wow, Melody or Stamody, or you are seeing exactly what it was that we were talking about. Because it's like you will have grown to see it. And at the time that you really see it and want to work on it, then it will have reduced itself to a focus that won't be any more than what we gave to you. When we try to help you in areas that are still so distant from your focus, we almost get lost in the Word. Did that make sense to you? Because when we try to help you, when we try to describe to you something and we know that you can't see it if we gave it to you in a few words, we get lost in the words of how many words it takes to try to paint you a picture that you can zero in on. But we know for sure that if we just said, here it is, that it would be Greek to you, because your ability at that moment to zero in on what we're talking about is non-existent, or is so vague.
There's one thing that you all need to add to your list, and that is you're not exerted enough effort to accomplish or to win the match.
Self-control.
Self-control. In other words, even though you think you are conquering it, you can do better. And this is how you want to think. We're not saying you're not doing good.
No, that's destructive to you.
Right. But what you want to always realize is you can always do better. When we cannot bring into focus some thought, but we know there's one there, we do not sit and wait for maturity to bring it in. You know what I mean by that? Just let it take its course. We exert more effort at that time in order to bring the lesson in more quickly, so we will not lose time. Now, you have in front of you a list of your matches. How can you, in honesty, allow a match to be lost? How can you, in honesty, allow a match ever to be lost again? In other words, you want to develop such strength inside of you that you will have that list pasted on your face, so that as soon as something would come up that's on your list, it will be like a neon sign, and it will stop you from being able to respond in a way that will cause you to lose that match. If Pressody came up to you, you had on your list defensiveness, and Pressody came up to you and for some reason or another said something to you, and it might be correcting something that you were doing, that would be like a neon sign to you. Would to me. I want to be careful, because I can become defensive when somebody is criticizing me. You see what I'm saying? Because everything that comes your way from now on, everything, and this includes out-of-craft people, the ones who have out-of-craft tasks, you will, every contact, even a patient or a customer or a co-worker, a computer, anything will test you. I mean, everything is a match for you. This is how you want to look at it. And the effort that you exert to not allow yourself to lose the match is what you need at this time. And you ought to if you need to, go over it and over it in your mind every moment of the day that you can. I want to be aware of any match that's coming my way. Defensiveness, anger, sarcasm, hurt, sensuality. Don't let those things slip in the back door. They can't possibly slip in the back door if you are aware of them. It's only sleepiness even. How can you get sleepy if you are exerting the effort not to be sleepy? You don't have time to be sleepy because you're too busy exerting the effort to not get sleepy. Does that make sense to you? That's me.
You know, trusting your brain's appraisal of things that you see, and of whether or not you have heard something right, or you saw something right, or you did something right, but trusting your brain's appraisal is still a very, very big area that a lot of you have serious work to accomplish in control. Because to us, each time you trust that brain's appraisal to a degree that you haven't lifted up to see it as a member of the next level would see it, and stop listening to the patterns of reason and logic of the brain, then a match is lost. Who cares whether it's minor or major? But it's extremely significant to us that you learn not to trust the brain's appraisal. Now, we've told you that a brain's appraisal is going to be based upon the genetic heritage of that brain, the education of that particular vehicle, all the things that vehicle considers as a reasonable analysis of the circumstance as he sees it. And none of that is worth a hoot to the next level. That's not the way something is appraised. That's not the way a judgment is made. How is the judgment made? By members of the next level. And by procedure. What is the procedure? When you're trying to see something for what it is. What is the procedure?
Remembering what you've been told by older mentors.
No, that's just in your brain.
Okay. Looking at the procedure.
That's not it. Those are still worth nothing by themselves. What then?
Check part.
That's the best one. That's the best one. Looking to your check partner for the answer. Looking to, depending upon what it is, looking to your teachers. If your teachers are not cannot play check partner with you in that category, then look to others who are assigned on that crew or that task. Then the process of reasoning next level works. It does not work if I have looked up the procedure and I see it, and here I'm going to give it to you. I've been blessed, I see it, I know exactly what it says. Now, will you please see it the way I see it? That's not the way the processes of judging something work. And some of you still can't get that adjustment made in your bones. You can understand a little bit of it if we talk about it in a meeting and really get excited about it and tell you about it. And you'll even go through the motion of saying to check partners, how do you think this should be done? And you'll be real nice. You'll have your vehicle under control, and you're saying, now, whatever they say, I'm not going to get excited. Even though I know the answer here, I'm going to go with this because it's procedure to go with this. And which is a distortion of the whole thing. But we would wave flags down Greenville Avenue from one end to the other. T and I by ourselves, we would walk the whole route, back and forth all day and night. I'm serious. If you could prove to us that you had accomplished not trusting your own brain and your own analysis of how you see something, or your own, even the way you interpret an instruction. Because that's not the way it works. You always go to the other person. Anytime you tell them, you have thrown a kink into the natural process. Anytime you tell them and say, that was the wrong way to do it, what do you think? You know? Because it's really very difficult at that point to go back and seriously make your vehicle unaccept what it has just, the conclusion it has just come to. It's very, very hard to do. Now, this is not human thinking we're talking to you about. This is not human thinking. That's the reason it's so hard for you to get it in your head bones. because it's not human thing. It takes you forcing next level mind in, occupying space in a brain that has no heritage of performing in this manner, and saying, this is the way you're going to learn to perform. And you're not going to trust your eyes, your judgment, even according to procedure. That's not the way it works. Now, and this is, all of you, I think, without exception, should have found that on your list. Because the degree that you have advanced in that, getting enough next level mind in to be secure there, is not sufficient. It's not sufficient. It's got to be stronger in that area to have a healthy deposit in your new vehicle.
Another thing that should be on your list is similar to what Joe was talking about, but wanting your own way. Like you make a suggestion that you could use such and such, and it comes to Lynx, and if Lynx vetoes it, what kind of reaction do you have? It's usually a negative one, right? And some of you will accept it. Oh, okay.
Or you blame SAP-3 for not letting Lynx know the way things really occurred and why you really need it, and all
Got
because
all out of proportion.
they got all out of shape. And if only I had been able to present this to it, it would have been just as bad then.
But wanting
Because
your
the symptom is what
right.
is the rule of that game.
It's just wanting your own way, and if I could have talked to Lynx, I could have influenced them enough to see it my way. I mean, that's what you're saying. You see, and this is something that you've got to trust, that Lynx has enough sense to evaluate, plus the fact Lynx has enough sense to know not to use their own mind. And we do not do anything using our own brain. We don't even do it using what little mind we have with us. We push it off on the next level. And if we don't get an answer, we just assume that it's not important, and so we drop it.
And if we can't both, looking to the other one for it, find it, then it hasn't worked. It has not yet come into focus. We cannot proceed with it.
And it may be days.
But we have to look to the other one for it.
That's right.
We can present if it's an idea that's coming in, we can present maybe the framework of it, but if we have an opinion about it, we've destroyed it. Can you all understand that? We can't have an opinion about it. We can merely share the idea like you would share a dream. If we said, what was your dream last night? But you're completely wrong if then you interpret the dream for us. Do you follow what the difference there is? Now, I've got to go back to this that he's talking about, because a lot of you do not know 10% of how frequently you wave flags for your own idea, for something you want to do your way. Now, it's in a sense, it's almost the same thing as the thing we covered just before, but in another sense, it's different. But it's alike in that both of them are wrong. If you could realize, when we told you, if you needed a medicine or something's wrong with your toe, or you got a sore throat or something, then that you present the symptom as clearly as you can, and let the older member go over the symptom with you, and then let the older member present you with the remedy. You can't believe how many different things that can apply to. It does not apply to just ailments. It applies to things that you're out of craft task. It applies to things in the lab. It applies to things, procedures that SAP-3 goes through, that you still forget to just present the symptom of that circumstance, and then say, what do we do? Because in presenting the symptom, you have no preconceived notions. In presenting the symptom, if you present it right, you're even saying, I might be wrong, this symptom may not exist. It may be something else, but you're just expressing what seems to you to be the symptom of the problem. And that way it keeps it uncolored. It keeps it, it's not being distorted by the vehicle. It's just, if you can realize and know it and tell the truth when you're saying, I think this is the symptom, to the best of my ability to see the symptom, here is the symptom. Like, let's say at a task where you feel like you need a particular tool or you need something else. It's the same thing. It doesn't work. You can't say what tool you need. If it's in a certain area, links might come back and say, well, what tool would do this? Because in certain areas we might not even be able to get down into that primitive task that you're having to do to the degree. But don't jump the gun on it and assume, well, Links isn't going to know that it takes a 16-sided Phillips screwdriver to do this task, so I'm going to tell Links that I need a 16-sided Phillips screwdriver. They don't know what one is anyhow. Well, don't be surprised. We might, because probably we're the only ones that ever saw one. But nevertheless, you don't jump the gun on it. Don't assume. In other words, don't color the situation by what you want to accomplish out of the situation. A lot of times you might want a tool or something in your task that is completely unwarranted. That if it were really needed, the employer would have presented you with it. If he expected you to come with it, whether it's a tool or, and I don't mean just a tool, a book is a tool. Information is a tool. Like we've been trying to deal with, help Herr Rode with the task that he took recently, and he needs something, he feels that he needs something to read and to study. Well, we've got to go back to the beginning in this situation with Herr Rode and wonder whether or not he took a task that he was not qualified for. And he has to now examine this. Whether or not because you can't tell somebody that you can do something and then as the things arise to do, then learn how to do them, and then come back and do them. But let's say that probably more than likely at Herr Rode's task, I don't know. Let's say maybe Herr Rode did not oversell himself. Then there should be no embarrassment in asking any question as many times as it takes to whoever seems to be receptive to that question. Now, if you begin to see from that individual that they're beginning to be annoyed by your questions, then say, goodness, is there someone else I could ask? Because I really seem to be lacking in this area, or is there some hint, or if I knew that I was supposed to know this much about this thing, maybe I've taken this task inappropriately. Maybe I'm not qualified for it. But you don't go and have some remembrance of some book that you saw back when you were in the world that maybe if you had a chance to study it, it might beef you up and prepare you for these areas that you feel like you are short in on that task. That's not the way you do it. You size up the situation. Did I overinflate myself? Did I take a job I am not prepared for? Or am I close enough to be prepared for it that my employer would be open to helping me, or he can suggest someone who can help me in the areas that I am unknowing. Now, if I were the employer, I would welcome questions in areas of unknowing. If I didn't welcome them, I would certainly find someone who had the time and who I respected in that task to designate as someone for you to take your questions to. I would like for you to not have so many preconceived notions about how to do these little things in the task. I'd rather you learn how we do it here at this task. Do you see what we're saying? So there are many, many ways to look at it. But the reason I brought this up of Verodi is because that's another example of present the symptom. Something to now, and it can be. It isn't always just this way. Sometimes it can be this way. It can be just a feeling of just pain or depression, if you would translate that way. In other words, but it's a strong.
Prepare those experiments to please the vehicle. Everything that you consume is a test for you. Your likes, your dislikes, how much you consume, how much you like certain things and you want to eat more of it, your reaction to different things that are being prepared, how it's served to you. Anything that you can, that I can think of, can cause a reaction in you. And it can very well be a negative reaction.
Now, if you're not letting your vehicle can play dirty tricks on you, like if you have an obvious valve that it wants to spin on, and you clamp that valve, it's going to try some valves maybe that are new. It won't always try the valves that would be obvious. It would seek out. If you work pretty good at the clamps on obvious ones, it'll seek out one that's not so obvious. And you'll say, well, heaven's sakes, I don't know why, but never before has this food, this particular item in our consuming disagreed with me, but, for the past 3 times, it's disagreed with me, and now I can't consume it at all. And most of the, 99% of the time, it's not chemistry. 1% of the time, it might be an off balance in chemistry that might need some correction. 99% of the time, it's the vehicle getting to exercise some of its own way. Because its own way is saying, I can't eat that. And if it can get away with it, if it's something that's very just about universally acceptable by a vehicle, but all of a sudden your vehicle's not accepting it, I think I'd be a little suspicious of the vehicle. Wouldn't you? And recognize that some tricks are being played on you?
Well, you just want to be aware that your vehicle, we don't do anything for your vehicle's sake. Pleasure. However, we do want to make your vehicle comfortable so that it won't give you any more trouble, like the craft. But in a sense, that's not the reason we got such a big craft. We got it because of many reasons, but they're strictly next level reasons. And then it's also a way that the vehicle can enjoy it also. But you want to always look for the next level meaning behind everything. When you go into the lab to prepare an experiment, do you go in as a human vehicle, going in there to do it? Or are you going in as a member of the next level, going to a lab to prepare an experiment? When you go into a fiber lab, do you go in there to do it as a human? Or do you do it as a member of the next level, preparing to do an experiment? And this applies to everything you do. You must eventually take the stand as a member of the next level 100%. I had no other way to go out of that.
In other words, that's where you're headed. You cannot, there are no other choices. You have to go that way. Because that's what you want to do. That's why you're here. So why not do it now and get more strength in that direction and benefit yourself? But you must change your thinking. If you are going to a viewing task or you're watching TV, you do not go in to sit down and watch the TV as a human and get into all the girls in the bikinis or the good-looking guys or, boy, that Magnum P.I., he sure is neat, you know. Don't even let those thoughts come into your mind. What you want to know is, what is it that I'm supposed to benefit from by watching that viewing tape?
What can I learn?
What can I learn from it? And I can guarantee you can learn something. But if you get in there, you get into the story, you get into the show as a human would, you have missed that opportunity to gain anything. All you've done is just existed for that hour.
Right, really stepped backward.
It's just like one individual went to see the Starman, and on the way back, all he did was cry. I don't know why Lynx had to see this movie. It didn't make sense to me. I just found fault with it. Well, where was that person? Where was his mind when he was watching that show? Because I could see a lot of next-level things there. So, in a sense, that individual was looking at the movie as a human. He lost out entirely upon what he could learn from that particular thing. So don't think that you're here to play part human, part next level. You're here to be next level. Totally. Everything that happens to you. Everything. From what you choose to put on your vehicle, what goes into your mouth that ends up in your tummy, all of that is next level thinking. Your response to each other, your reactions, your thoughts about each other, any task that you do in the craft or out of the craft, everything has a higher meaning and a higher way of doing it. And what you want to do is try to find out how to do it in the most right way, meaning the next level way. Don't miss those opportunities that are headed your way. You know, when in a sense, you're being born again into a new vehicle, and excuse me, and let's use a comparison, like when a female human is carrying a baby, the last few months that female is carrying the baby, the baby grows an awful lot. It grows probably faster than it does the first several months of pregnancy. And which in my mind, it's absorbing a lot of nutrients and absorbing a lot from the mother. Now, let's say that you all, I can feel the impetus pick up. I can feel it. In other words, you all are thinking more now like you're supposed to be thinking than ever before. But you're not thinking 100%. Now, what you're striving for is to think 100% and get that going really fast so that you can feed that force that is going to take over that next level body. Call it what you want. Mind, life force, whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's time now to really push and be very critical of everything that you come in contact with. Remember we told you one time, when you get up out of this chair after this meeting, what are you going to do?
how are you going to respond? Are you going to go back to your old human ways? If you need to get to the BC, you dash like crazy to get in there before somebody else does, because they're so slow and they take so much time once they get in there. And you're really only going there so that they can have more time in the BC. You know, how you twist it and all like that. And so don't revert to the human way of doing something. Really make up your mind to do it as a member of the next level, the higher way. Even if you don't know what the higher way is, seek it out, because I can guarantee you can learn it. But don't think for one moment that we give you anything for entertainment of the vehicle. Everything is designed for the next level.
It doesn't mean everything we do is to be against your vehicle. It means that the vehicle is not what we're after. If the vehicle is pacified during the process, we're lucky. But the vehicle is never the object. You know, what T was talking about on the movie tasks and the television, if you would think of it just as if we took you in a spacecraft way up in space and said, now sit down in these chairs and turn on these screens, and I'm going to plug you into some of the things that are going on the planet, and you watch them. And do you think that an older member would ask you to watch them because he wanted you to get down on their level? He would want you to watch them to see where their level was, see what they were still into, see what they were still, the ways they still needed to grow, the changes that still needed to take place. That doesn't mean if something happened that's funny that you couldn't laugh at it while you were watching it, but you would never try to stoop down to tune into it at the level of the peers of those who were in that world. So be very careful about that.
It's like this viewing task that the ones went to yesterday. It was very easy, I thought it was, to see it as a member at the next level. It was, in fact, designed to see the different levels that were involved in that show. And this is how we want you to see everything, so that whenever you see a viewing, as a viewing task of any sort, or even as anything that you do with each other, or you have some of the ones of you who have out-of-craft tasks, going out and meeting others in the world, look at it. Of course, you can't give the other member of the next level and the high and mighty attitude. We're not talking about that, but see what they do and how they do it as though you're evaluating them. But, of course, you don't let them know it, you know. But if they are, their conduct is poor, or they're hyper, or they're irritable, or whatever you have to come in contact with, look at it as what they really need is such and such, you know.
Yes, you're really looking at a plant and that plant's condition
Right.
at that point. And we do that if we're filling the gas tank or anything that we're doing, the checker at the supermarket, or the way a person acts driving down the freeway, anything. You're still looking at it as someone from someone else, because you're a different place in time than they are. And you're being aware of all the areas that they still are undeveloped. And every time you wish for them improvement in those areas, it's like depositing a few cents in their slot machine to help them to improve in those areas. Cody?
Sometimes you mentioned a little bit ago that you'll say, try to get a lesson across and say it 3, 4, 5 ways, and maybe one of them will stick. And if one of them does and makes the vehicle realize that this is the interpretation is the one that really sticks. And the other 4 don't stick as much. I'm trying to understand that a little bit ago you talked about the vehicle analyzing, and you're down here, and when it should be up here if it doesn't analyze. Is that the same thing you're talking about?
Well, when I'm trying to interpret what T is saying, I never trust that I've gotten the right one. Does that help you? In other words, I never trust that I have chosen the proper interpretation of what T has said. I hope that I have, and I continually examine it to see if there is a better way I could have received what was just communicated to me. This is what T was talking about, of examining to see. It's not analyzing. It's not, well, in a sense it's kind of analyzing, but it's looking to see if you can, if there's more positive to be learned by that examination than you learned just initially at first response to it. And I don't ever trust that I've heard the right thing. You shouldn't trust. When we tell you something and your brain says, oh, that means such and such, you're making a mistake if you think you have found exactly what it meant. Because I guarantee you, none of you got it exactly from where it was coming from. Know that you didn't, and know that I hope it's a higher interpretation than I would have had that been sent to me before, and I'm going to try to continue to raise it so that I can tune more into where they are coming from. Because the faster you can grow, the more we can come to common terms. And believe it or not, you can come to common terms with older members, because the older member will if the older member is working with you, will express himself to you at terms that could be common with both of you. If you can understand that. Like, if you heard some of the conversations between T and Doe, you'd just be out in left field, because you wouldn't know what in the world was going on. And that's the gospel, because we'll hit about 1 out of 10 words, and leave a lot of spaces out, and we don't have to fill in a lot of blanks, and we can sense it. Now, this is sometimes, if we're both in pretty good control of the vehicles, and we're fortunate at the moment. But it's because, but I even know then, though, that there's a possibility at everything I hear that I'm not hearing the highest potential of what's being sent to me. Even though I know that the person working with me is using a terminology that should be adequate for our communication. You follow that? Now, I know that we set our sights, not intentionally, our minds do it. Our next level minds set our sights at you a lot of times that force you to lift higher. We don't intentionally do that. We intentionally try to see if we can come right down where you just absolutely are in tune with what we're saying. But then we learn the next day, or when we read notes or something else, that we were talking here and what you thought you got was here. But it's just an attitude that you have to have of saying, I hope I got the highest interpretation of that, but I'm going to continue to examine it and see if there was a higher one that I could have had. And if an opportunity comes along, if it's worth it, if it's significant enough to check it out, then you check it out. But lots of times another circumstance will, similar to that will arrive very shortly that will give you a chance to exercise the higher interpretation.
Also, if we say something many different ways and you only understand one way, then that's something that you can build on to understand it, so that it's kind of like you can use it for the checkpoint, and you want to try to understand it the other ways that we said it to see if your understanding was correct. Do you understand that? In other words, we say it in different ways in order for you to understand what we're saying. Because sometimes with maybe what you say or the expression on your face or something like that makes us feel like you don't understand what we're talking about. So we keep on in order to give you an understanding that you can take and think about what we've said and then see to it, use the one that you do understand as a checkpoint to see if you understood it totally. Does that make sense to you? And if it doesn't match with, let's say we said something in 3 or 4 different ways and you understood one way, and you kept listening and listening and listening to those other ways, and yet they didn't jive with that one thing you did understand, then I would question whether or not I understood that one thing, and not accept it as the right answer.
Because you want to work very, very fast. You want to, as you listen, you want to make them jive. And if only one out of the 3 possible interpretations you could have seems to register, make sense to me, then you haven't really gotten it.
Well,
You follow what we're saying? You're on shaky ground as to whether or not you've gotten it. So we know that you can't, that there are priorities here. Like we can't, on every little thing we say, we can't stop and take all the questions that it would take to be sure that you got it exactly at the right place. But because we have to move faster than that. And in a sense, it forces you to listen more intensely, and it's like a game that you have a time limit on. And you want to work as fast as you can work on it to get as many right answers as you can possibly get. Now, and your score at the end of the meeting is the number of things you got close to where they were sent. Do you follow that? That's a good score on that meeting.
I was just trying to review, I kind of understand what you said, like the minor match and the major match. And is it right to think something like whenever the vehicle would break a procedure, or whenever it would try to do what it wants to do, that to some degree you're involved in a match? In other words, because there's force behind what it wants to do, and that's force trying to express itself in a way that you don't want to let it out that way.
Sure.
So in other words, the difference, I'm trying to understand the difference between a minor match and a major match. Is the degree or the speed or something? Or
I don't think you're being too analytical right now, because you can always so lose that minor match, okay?
I would consider them all major times.
Yeah, but I tell you, I can feel it when it's minor and when it's major. But that doesn't mean that I let minors get any less attention from me than majors. So don't think, well, that was just a minor one, so it doesn't matter that much. Because a minor one, to a member of the next level, is just as important of getting rid of as a major one. The main difference between a minor and a major is the size of the event. You know, the event of your spending or your loss of control. Then it was a major match.
I got him as all the major.
In my own examination, I can see what I would consider, just because the size of the vehicle or something appears at the beginning of, might be a minor match, and there's a thought. If I don't cut the thought off, then that thought can lead, it could come up again to another circumstance, and at each point that I don't cut it off, it progresses to the point where it can become a blatant expression.
That's right.
Now, I just want to make sure.
Accumulates.
Right. If you talking about having our vernacular thing with links, and I wanted to, and maybe this is just something in my own vehicle I haven't really zeroed into to get a handle on, but I may be wrong, but I think I can recognize a feeling, like I can recognize something's not feeling right in myself. The way there's something I'm feeling there. But that feeling could come out in, I could put almost a half dozen or a dozen labels on it in the way that it might, and maybe I'm just getting too analytical, but I could see how that feeling could be being critical or judgmental or having eyes on somebody else, or feel my brain being interference. But I think, should I exert more effort to put a label on what that feeling is, or is it okay to just say, I recognize this is a feeling that's not right?
If you recognize that it's not right from a next level standpoint, that's what's important. Because a lot of times your vehicle will say that's not right. If the vehicle has a great deal of pride in its own judgment of morality, and what was right for you to say and what was right for her to say, right, then, and if it's from a human standpoint, it's of no value. So as long as you're listening, if you're saying it doesn't feel right in relationship to what you've learned in next level ways, then why label it? Why go any further with it? Why waste any more time on it? It's just you've seen the indication that it was out of place, and that you're entertaining something there that could lead you in the wrong direction.
What you just said is what happens. There's a feeling, the vehicle, like what you described, and that little picture will come in, like what you just said to me. In a week from now, something may come up, and what you just said will play. And I'll say, that's something I need to stop. I can't let it go any further. And though that's an okay way to handle it, I don't need to have a label that says this is such and such.
Actually, your label isn't correct anyway.
No, they're just little. See, if any time a label becomes a problem to you, it wasn't any. We were trying to give you some labels to assist you. But if you feel like, I'm in trouble because I can't find a label, then the label was the problem to you. So, what we're trying to do is to stop it. And if you can stop it faster by not labeling it, then don't label it.
One of the reasons we asked you to write those things was because we wanted to know if you were aware that you had matches.
We want to know that you know the areas that your difficulty leads you into the most blindness.
And we're aware of some of the matches that you have to go through. And if we do not see it on your paper, then we will probably help you to be aware of it. But we want you to delve into how, in other words, we want you to tell us. We want you to be aware of it. And when you let us know about it, it means that you have really looked deep to find out what your problem is. And this is what we're looking for. We want you to be so critical of yourself that even if you bite your fingernails, I'm aware that I eat something that isn't on I'm joking, really.
Yeah, because we've seen that blown out of shape, but we do want you to not miss things. Like it would be wrong for the person who does chew their fingernails to not know that that's a little habit that needs to be put in check. But I tell you, it's something else some of you treat like it's insignificant. That is a lot more significant than you treat it, and that's gossiping. Some of you think that gossiping is when you get off someplace and talk about each other to some length. I'm gossiping if I make a comment to someone else that's out of place, even if that person doesn't comment back. But if that person might go someplace and make a comment to someone else about what that previous person commented about, even if it's in a note to links, it's been participation in gossip. I mean, let's say I don't like a certain item of consuming, or I don't like the way the new food processor is cutting up the lettuce. First of all, you weren't asked whether or not you liked it. Now, more than likely, Lynx will ask a representation of what the product looks like, and whether or not it's slimy or changed the taste, or it's less desirable or more desirable, and get a picture, because Lynx, if Lynx brought in the food processor and said use it, the only way we can follow up on that task is to check out those different areas. But let's say Lynx hasn't checked it out, but you make some comment about, I don't like the lettuce this way. Gossip has started right there. But then you don't say anything further, but then somebody else says, well, I know that so-and-so doesn't like it that well. Gossip over here. Now, all of those things are gossip. Now, and we know that even more serious gossip than that occurs still within the craft. Some of it silent, and just little glances about to one another about someone else. And that's totally, that's serious business. That is as unlike the next level as anything can be. To have those little things of letting someone know what you think about someone else, or what you think about something that is not your business to remark on, or to have anything to say on. It seems little to you. It isn't little, because it opens a door that is a dangerous door and can lead to many big doors that are problems.
I don't know if this would help. I'm hoping this would help me, because trying to know, is it right for one to know when you've won a match? Maybe I should explain more. Like what Al Furby was saying, where every day you can see that one thought adds to another, so maybe that's now a major match. But then you get to that point where maybe it comes to a head, and you still hold it in and don't vent it.
Well, you haven't won it if you're going to let it just keep on playing in your head, even if you don't. You've won it when you've stopped it. Now, it may not be as big of an expression, as big of a venting, but do you think that when those tapes keep playing in your head that they don't take a certain amount of force to play? They do. It takes electricity to run that tape, even if you got earphones on. And you don't have to be singing along out here with what you hear in here in order for the force to drive that amplifier. Do you follow what we're saying? Do you understand that analogy? Well, it takes force to run that amplifier. And the earphones can be on you, and you may not let anybody know. But if you continue to let those thoughts accumulate and build that are next level thoughts, inappropriate thoughts, it's spending right there. You're losing a match. Now, it's not as blatant as there are all kinds of things I could do to make the match a bigger match and the loss greater. I can tell you about it, or I can get mad about it, or I can go bawl about it. Or, you see what I'm saying? But even if I am continuing to entertain those things and not work against them, working against them each time you stop something that is trying, then if you've stopped it before it has done any damage, or any significant damage, then, now, see, you're getting a little too much into the syndrome of match, to say, well, when is match won, when is match lost? The match was just a dumb term we're trying to give you for helping you realize the importance of converting force and converting energy. But you can spend a lot of energy and a lot of force in the wrong direction if you let negative thoughts, or thoughts unlike the next level, just mount and mount and mount. You can, in other words, you can build a boil in there that one day, if you have let it accumulate, it's going to find an outlet. If you've let that poison go on, it's going to find an outlet. You can't go very far with the poison of a boil of negative thoughts or thoughts unlike the next level before they find some way of getting an outlet.
Are you aware that if you have something bothering you, that you can get it off your mind? Are you aware that you can do that? Well, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's winning the match.
Distracting, I can distract.
That's right.
Sure. If stop the tapes. If they're less than positive tapes, they're a degree of spending, and what you want to do is stop them right there. Now, see, thoughts like this have turned our Eloise helpful hints over here on trying to deal with certain things has turned it into something else. And you want to, in other words, it's almost like the game we gave you as an analogy of these matches. You've put yourself through such mind games on them that the analogy can hardly match all those games you wanted to play with it. You see, you couldn't just stick to the ones that we gave you, or to the way we were playing the game. But if you can see that simple formula and keep it that simple, when that force is coming in, it's going to try to bend. And if I can recognize the force at the time it's still force and start to convert it, I'm so much better off than if I let that force begin to convert to certain expressions, certain kinds of thoughts, certain kinds of feelings. If I am not able to nip at that quickly, and I still recognize after it has begun to express itself, I was slow to recognize, but I say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let this go any further. And then it takes a great deal of force for me to stop that force. Then I've done my job. Now, if I'd been keener, I still could have tried to be alert at an earlier point. But see, even even I'm getting into, with you, a human type of intellectual reasoning, which this is above. Can you all understand that? Trying to analyze it in a way that you're going to have all the pat answers. It doesn't work that way. It works by gut. It works by effort. It works by growth comes by capping something and liking the fact that you've kept it, and knowing that as a result you are going to end up with more stuff on your head than on your bottom. You're going to have more growth in the higher realm of knowledge than you would had it been spent at the lower realm. Almost done.